Just starting the live stream. Just give me a minute.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachhalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Radhanatha Swamin Iti Namani Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauramani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Samkaroti Vachalam Pangam Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dintaranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining. In the Bhagavad Gita series today, we'll be entering the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So we have come a long way in our journey. We have completed 15 out of the 18. So another 3 more. So almost 5/6 of the Bhagavad Gita we have managed to discuss. So reading the Bhagavad Gita is not just an intellectual exercise. Krishna in the 18th chapter describes the effort of the serious student of the Gita by saying that the study of the Gita, I consider, Krishna says, that he who studies the Gita, I consider that he has worshipped me with his intelligence. Very interesting phrase. Krishna says, I consider that he has worshipped me with his intelligence. So, every Wednesday we are coming together and worshipping Krishna. So, this is not just an idle activity. This is a deep form of worship. Oftentimes, we are busy with external worship of the Lord. But external worship is good, but the worship which is external must also go internal. Yes, the physical senses must be engaged in Krishna's service, but important that along with the physical senses, the mind is also engaged. Otherwise, we are busy doing puja, but our mind is somewhere else. And higher than the mind is the intelligence. So the intelligence should be absorbed. And higher than the intelligence is the false ego. So how do we purify our false ego or offer the false ego to Krishna or worship the Krishna? By purifying it, by trying to disassociate our identification with the body and to reignite the true ego. What is the true ego? Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. And ultimately, we want to come to the stage of Sharanagati where we offer our soul. And when we offer our soul, of course, all external layers also go along with it. Manasa Deho Geho Jo Kichu More Arpilu Tua Pade Nanda Kishore. Very beautiful song written by our acharyas. Manasa Deha Geho Jo Kichu More Arpilu Tua Pade Nanda Kishore. This is the stage of surrender where the devotee deeply feels and lives in the consciousness that whatever is mine, not just external, not just, of course, my house, my wealth, but also my body and mind. Manasa, Deha, Geha. My mind, my body, and my house and belongings. Jo kichu more, whatever is connected with me. Arpilu Tuvapade. I'm offering this to you. So, in this whole process of offering, of course, purification of intelligence is very important, and that is happening by acquiring spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence becomes fortified by study of scriptures in the association of devotees. And that is what we are doing, and Krishna has very much appreciated or appreciates that effort by saying that those who study the Gita worship me with their intelligence. So we are going to continue in that journey. So congratulations for starting this worship, and we are going to continue this worship. So we discussed the 15th chapter, a very beautiful chapter, Purushottama Yoga, where Krishna very beautifully describes what is the real nature of this material world. This material world, which appears so real, is actually a reflection of the real world. And Krishna explains the example of the banyan tree, and very wonderfully he analyzes it. And he says that one must aim to go towards the original world and not remain trapped in the illusory temporary reflection, where one continuously transmigrates to the 8.4 million species of life. Asanga shastrena dhridena chitva. Krishna says one must be armed with the weapon of detachment, and one must take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. And we discussed that in great detail. Eventually, Krishna explains his own position and who he is. And out of all the understandings of him, how the understanding of him as the Supreme Person, Purushottama, is the topmost. And just to make sure that nobody is confused or misunderstands themselves also to be Purushottam. Yeah, Krishna is Purushottam, but so am I. Or my Guru is Purushottam. Or that saint is also Purushottam. Somehow, sadly, actually, in Kali Yuga, people are so excited to quickly label their own gurus and saints as incarnations of God. That's such a strong propensity. Krishna is saying, no, even liberated, perfected souls are not Purushottam. That is Kshara and Akshara, conditioned souls and the liberated or perfected souls. But even the liberated souls are just my part and parcel. It's just that they're not trapped by Maya. They are not infinite. They are still Anu. They are still sparks, although pure. And ultimately, both the conditioned and the liberated living entities are dependent on me. I am their source. I am their sustainer. I am their refuge. And that is why I am celebrated in all the worlds as the Supreme Person. And Krishna says, he who understands me like this, Yomam evam masammudho janati purushottama, sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. One who arrives at this proper conclusive understanding takes full shelter of me. So, of course, we respect the liberated souls And especially those liberated souls who are pure devotees, we especially take their association, guidance, and serve them. But we never confuse Purushottam with liberated souls. The pure devotees of the Lord who are liberated from utter entanglement help us to approach Krishna. Just like a son who's lost can be helped by another son, another brother who knows the father, he can help to connect back to the father. But the other son doesn't say, I am the father. So that is the role of the spiritual master. The role of the spiritual master is to take our hand, Krishna's hand, and put our hand in Krishna's hand. That is their role. They are not God, but they are representatives of God. They are not God, but they are servants of God. They are the ambassadors from the spiritual world. They have come down to demonstrate being living examples of perfection and to inspire us and teach us by their example and teachings. So anyways, at the end of the 15th chapter, Krishna says that this is, whatever I have revealed to you is a very, very deep confidential understanding. And ultimately, one has to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God with full heart. Now, Krishna starts the 16th chapter. The 16th chapter that we are about to discuss is entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures. Divine and Demoniac Natures. In Sanskrit, it is called, the chapter is entitled Daivasura Sampata Vibhaga Yoga. Daiva Asura Sampat, their characteristics. Vibhaga, the categorization of them. Yoga. So this is a very interesting chapter, and it is related to what has been the discussion in the previous two chapters, and how I want to explain to you before we get into the chapter proper. Krishna has explained in the 15th chapter how the material world is an inverted tree, an inverted banyan tree. And Krishna makes a very interesting analogy there. He talks about the branch, the roots, the leaves, the twigs, the buds, and he compares with various aspects. I'm not going to again play back all of that. We have discussed that many times in our replay of the 15th chapter. But there's one thing which Krishna says in the 15th chapter. He says, Guna pravruddhaha. He says, this tree is nourished with what? Just like a tree in this world is nourished with water, right? Water and minerals, that's what gets sucked in. And based on the water and the minerals and the nature of the plant, what happens? Certain kinds of fruits develop on the tree. So what is the nourisher for this reflected tree?
Three modes of material nature.
Yes. Guna pravruddha. The gunas are the one which are nourishing. And that is why the understanding of the gunas is so essential for understanding the conditioning of the living entity and also understanding the functioning of this material world. Because when we understand its functioning, then we can talk about getting liberated. Otherwise, we don't even know what we are supposed to be free from. The problem with many people are people think they are trying to be free from, but they don't even know what they are bound with. That's why many people in conditioned souls says, I am free, I can do whatever I want. I will say whatever I want, I will eat whatever I want. They're not realizing actually they're not free, they're totally bound by the modes of nature. Because they do not know what they are bound with, they don't even know what is the meaning of freedom. They equate whimsical behavior and uncontrolled mind and senses as equivalent to freedom. This is the delusion. So, of course, That is the reason it is important to understand what is bondage before one can actually understand what is freedom. Otherwise, one may mistake freedom or principles of freedom to be bondage and principles of bondage to be freedom, which is what happens in a predominant way in Kali Yuga. Please remember this statement. And this will become more clear as we progress through this chapter. But it is very important to understand. Some people, when we talk to them about spiritual principles, and I'm not going to go very deeply right now in this topic, we'll discuss this in the subsequent classes, but just do remember this, make a mental note. We tell them about spiritual principles, when we tell about four regulative principles, when we talk about sadhana, when we talk about offering food, we talk about japa, people think, oh, so much of bondage in my life, so much restrictions you are trying to impose. I want to be free. I don't want to be bound by rules and regulations. Essentially, what they are saying is, because they do not understand the nature of bondage, essentially they are saying is, I just want to flow with the desires that my mind and senses impel me in based on the influence of the modes. So freedom also requires regulation. Freedom doesn't mean whimsical action, isn't it? So anyway, if you are able to understand and grasp this point, it's very good. If you are unable to grasp, it will become clear as we progress. But the key point is, those who are not in knowledge often think about those which are actually things which are good for them to be bad and things which are bad to be good. This is one point which Krishna actually explains later in this chapter. We'll come to that. But going back to the discussion, Krishna's mention of this tree being nourished by the modes. Let's come back to that. This tree, inverted tree, is being nourished by the modes. And this nourishment leads to different kinds of fruits on this tree. So when one is nourished by modes, based on the modes that one is nourished by, one manifests within oneself certain fruits. What do we mean by fruits? Certain kinds of qualities become manifest in us. If we are nourished by sattva, certain kinds of qualities become manifest in us. There may be sweet fruits. If you are in raja, then there may be sour fruits, salty fruits. If we may be affected by tamogun, then there may be bitter fruits like karela. So different kinds of fruits are manifested, and these fruits are representing different qualities which become manifest in the personality of the conditioned living entities who are jumping from branch to branch based on the modes that they are influenced by. So Krishna has not described this topic in detail. He described many other things. So Krishna now wants to go into this understanding because Krishna wants to emphasize that the modes manifest qualities, and the qualities are broadly of two types. Anyone wants to guess what are the two types of qualities broadly? Yes, anyone?
Good or bad?
Good or bad? Yes, anyone else?
Divine and demonic.
Haribol. Yes, that's the title of the chapter. Divine and demoniac. Daivi and Asuri. And Daivi also means Sura. And Asuri means demoniac. Now, before we go into the detailed qualifications, a detailed listing, let's understand this term Sura and Asura. Because Krishna is going to categorize, right? Divine and demoniac. Sometimes people struggle to understand what is the meaning of demoniac. They think demoniac means there must be some two horns, big teeth, black color. Those are the demons. And those who are dressed in nice dhoti kurta or suit boot tie are the devatas. No, that is not like that. It has nothing to do with sophistication or external appearances. So what is this Daivi and Asuri? The scriptures say, who are the Devas or the Suras? Vishnu Bhakta Smrta Daivaha Asuraha Tad Viparyayaha. Who are the Suras or the Devatas? Those who are devotees of Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, and who are cultivating themselves in that direction are the Suras. And who are the Asuras? The definition of Asuras is very simple. Asura tad viparyayaha. Those who are opposed to the Suras and the principles of the Suras are Asura. Very simple. So essentially, whatever the Suras do, the Asuras do the opposite thing. So the Suras want to surrender to God, the Asuras want to deny God or challenge God. The Suras want to work for the benefit of others, the Asuras want to work selfishly only for themselves. So Asuras are exactly opposite. And that is why such Asuras are called demoniac. The other word for Asuras is demoniac. Demoniac in their propensities. No matter externally how they appear, how sophisticated they are, whether they are eating with a fork and spoon in a 5-star restaurant, doesn't matter. But if they display the qualities of Asura, and what are those qualities? Of course, the detailed list we'll be discussing in this chapter, but the essential defining characteristic of all these qualities of the Asuras is that they are opposed to the qualities of the Suras. So in very simple words, those qualities which take us closer to Krishna are divine qualities. Those qualities which help align ourselves with the real nature of the soul are divine qualities. Those qualities which take us towards light, towards eternity, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma mritam gamaya. Don't go towards darkness, asuric, go towards light, daivi qualities. Don't go towards mrityu, repeated birth and death. Go towards amrita, eternal life. Go to the spiritual world. So one direction is daivi, another direction is asuri. So Krishna wants to analyze these various kinds of fruits and clearly identify what kind of qualities fall into the divine basket and what kind of qualities fall into the demoniac basket. Because sometimes we may not be able to understand what are the modes which are nourishing us, but we can understand what modes are nourishing us very clearly by seeing the fruits. Yes, we see the fruits. If the fruits are sweet, that means there are nice modes. If the fruits are sour or salty, then it is Rajasic mode. If it is bitter, stale, rotten, then it is Tamasic modes. Okay, so Krishna starts this chapter by first describing the good fruits, the divine qualities. And then Krishna enumerates the demoniac qualities. And then Krishna elaborates the demoniac qualities by scrutinizingly explaining the mentality, thinking, behavior of the Asuras. Why he does that? So that we can look at ourselves and see whether any of this in this checklist, any of this matches us. If it matches us, we have to be very careful to pluck it out. Oh, I thought this is a good fruit, but this apparently this is not a desirable fruit. I must throw this. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes we think we are not able to distinguish the plant and the weed. When we are planting something in a pot, we put seeds. The plant also sprouts and some weeds will also sprout. So what does an expert farmer do? Expert farmer knows which are the sprouts from the plant, the seeds, and which are the weeds. So the weeds he has to pluck out. So that the plant, the original seed, the intended seed grows without any challenge, any difficulty. But if we cannot even distinguish what is seed and what is weed, and we end up thinking the seed to be the weed and the weed to be the seed, then we are in a mess. And that is the Kali Yuga situation. That is what Krishna explains later in this chapter. We don't know what to be proud of. And we see that so much, it's so common. And I think you will also recognize even this Kali Yuga. If you see nowadays, what are the behavior, qualities, activities that parents of young children, just look around you. What is it that they appreciate in their children? Do they appreciate them knowing the Bhagavad Gita or reciting shlokas, or they appreciate them dancing on Bollywood songs? Or appreciate them dressed as ghosts going house to house for Halloween, rather than wearing tilak and dhoti and kurta and going house to house on Diwali? What is it that we value? Because we will only value, glorify, cherish those things which we ourselves in our heart consider valuable. So when we look around ourselves, we'll realize that actually people are so disconnected from transcendental knowledge that they do not know what is to be valued and what is not to be valued, because they don't know which fruit is the seed and which fruit is the weed. What is to be plucked out and what is to be cultivated. And that requires knowledge. So let us see what Krishna says. So this is a little bit of a detailed background, but I thought it was important so you have the right perspective. So first 3 verses, Krishna focuses on listing the divine qualities. So I'm going to read the 3 verses and then we'll just quickly go through each of the points. I again strongly recommend that please read the purport, because Srila Prabhupada in great detail explains the meaning of each of these qualities. I'm not going to go into great detail. I'm just going to explain the meaning of the quality in the interest of time. So for detailed study, please read purport. It's one of the very long purports. There are 26 qualities mentioned here in these 3 verses. So I'll recite the 3 verses. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyayas Tapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyamakrodhas Tyagah Shantir Apaishunam Daya Bhuteshwalo Luptvam Mardavam Hrir Achapalam Tejah Kshama Dhriti Shaucham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. First, Krishna describes the 26 qualities and says, this list are the qualities, all the qualities Sampadam Daivim. Sampadam qualities. What kind of qualities? Divine. Abhichatasya Bharata. Or one who is born of a divine nature. Now, my request to all of you is, now first thing is, okay, let me ask you this even before we go into this particular chapter. Okay. Or rather than asking you, let us do this. What I want you is, as we go through each of these qualities, divine and demoniac, please make a checklist, either in your mind or jot down, which of these divine qualities you think you have to some degree. And then when you go to the negative list, see which of these demoniac qualities you have to some degree. Okay, and then we'll reflect on that later. Don't worry, this is not a homework that you have to submit, so you can be honest. So I'm going to go through the list. Now, one thing before I go through all the qualities, is very important to also understand, while these 26 qualities are listed and all of them are divine, some of these qualities are especially important for certain individuals who are situated in a particular varna or ashram. What does that mean? I just want to give one or two examples. So, Tejaha, for example, one of the qualities is Teja. Teja means vigor for war. So think of it as Shaurya, the vigor for war. Now that kind of quality, it's a divine quality, but that quality is expected to be displayed by the Kshatriyas. Brahmanas typically are more expected to display qualities like Shama, Dhriti, forgiveness, fortitude. So all qualities are important, but some qualities are especially important in certain scenarios. And I will highlight wherever certain qualities are especially important in a certain scenario. So all these 26 qualities are important, but some of them are more important for certain varnas and ashramas. Okay, I hope you get that. So Krishna starts the list by giving the quality of Abhayam. Abhayam means fearlessness. Bhajahure mana Srinandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. So how does one become fearless? By taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Because one can become fearless in a fearful situation, either by being fully capable to counteract all fears, which is not possible. How can the living entity counteract all fears in the material world? Is not capable. Or one can take shelter of the Lord of Lords. Abhaya Charanara Vindare. Srila Prabhupada's name, the name that his spiritual master gave him was Abhaya Charanara Vinda. So it's called A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Correct? You remember? A.C. What does A.C. stand for? Abhaya Charanara Vinda Das. He is the servant of he whose feet are the source of Abhaya. So one of the most important qualities, especially for devotees, is to become fearless. And fearlessness comes by taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And this quality Prabhupada mentions is especially important for which varna and ashram? Anyone?
Sannyas.
Yes, for the sannyasis. Why for the sannyasis? Because the sannyasis have given up everything. They have no fixed home. They don't know where they'll get their next meal. They don't have bank balance. Sannyasi is supposed to depend exclusively on Krishna for his maintenance. So abhayam is very important. Sattva Sanshuddhi is also a very important quality. All progressive human beings should work on Sattva Samshuddhi. Sattva means existence, Samshuddhi means purification. One must be continuously endeavoring to purify his existence. And one purifies one's existence by following one's prescribed duties properly and by doing proper sadhana for spiritual elevation. As I'm going through this, if you're not understanding a specific thing, you can just raise your hands and I will take a question now, or you want to make a note and ask later, up to you. But I'm going to go through the list fast. If there is no interruption, then I will just quickly go through it. Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, again a divine quality. This is one thing we are doing right now, cultivation of divine knowledge. A life which is unexamined is not worth living. A very famous Western philosopher said. What does that mean? That if you're not actually trying to understand who you are, what is the goal of life, how to attain it, if you're not asking Athato Brahma Jigyasa, if you have no Jigyasa, if your Jigyasa is simply eating, sleeping, mating and defending, then you're as good as animal. So one must cultivate spiritual knowledge. That is a divine quality. Then three qualities are mentioned which are especially important for Grihasthas. They are valuable for all. For all. It's not that they're not important for others, but especially important for Grihasthas. What are they? Danam, Dama, and Yajna. Danam means giving in charity. Giving in charity is important for the Grihastha because amongst all the other varnas, other ashramas, not varnas, it's only the Grihastha who's earning. Very interesting. The brahmachari doesn't earn, the vanaprastha doesn't earn, the sannyasi doesn't earn. Only Grihastha earns. Brahmachari is dedicated to cultivation of knowledge. The vanaprastha is cultivated to developing renunciation. And the sannyasi is supposed to be absorbed in spiritual practice, devoting himself 100% to service to the Supreme Personality of God. But the Grihastha earns, and because he earns, there is a risk that he will feel that all these things are for my enjoyment. That is why he should give dana. So dana counteracts a selfish, greedy mentality. So somebody comes to us and asks for help and we feel it's genuine, we should always try to give according to our capacity. Danam. And Dhamma, when you have money, when you have house, when you have possessions, when you have facilities, resources, there's a tendency for unrestricted enjoyment. That is not good. Damaha, control of the senses. Otherwise, one will go down in one's consciousness. So for the Grihasthas, this is especially important. Brahmacharis, Vanaprastha, Sannyasis don't even have so much opportunity for material enjoyment because they don't have much possessions at all. And Yajna. Yajna means using one's resources for a higher cause, divine cause, by sacrificing it for a higher cause. Again, with a similar principle. So these three qualities, charity, self-control, and sacrifice, are especially important for Grihasthas. So since here in this group there are no brahmacharis, there may be, technically we may say, yeah, there are some boys and girls who are students. Yeah, in that sense they're brahmachari, but it's not brahmachari in the Vedic sense of the term. Most of us are Grihasthas, 90% this call. There's no Vanaprastha, from a spiritual definition. Some of us think just because we are retired, we are not doing a job, we are vanaprastha. No. Retirement from job is not equal to vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means one is deeply absorbed in spiritual cultivation and detachment. If one is retired and is doing that, then yes. And sannyas, of course, which is the final stage. Then Krishna mentions three qualities: swadhyaya, tapa, arjavam. Out of which swadhyaya, which refers to study of the Vedas, is especially important for the brahmacharis, the students, the celibate students. The swadhyaya of the brahmachari is not just learning history, geography, math, science. It's also about learning spiritual knowledge, learning the principles on which life should be based. Tapaha, austerity. Prabhupada explains austerity should be of, can be of three types: austerity of the body, austerity of the mind, austerity of speech. And Prabhupada explains quite a bit more. We don't have time for that. Please read that. Each of these austerities, how one can observe. Austerity of the body, mind, and speech. Austerity of the body is relatively easy. Austerity of the mind and the speech is very difficult. Arjavam, simplicity, being straightforward. Simplicity means being straightforward. I'm going to go through the list a bit faster, otherwise we'll not even complete the first three verses. Then Krishna gives three other qualities: ahimsa, satya, akrodhas. Ahimsa means non-violence. Now this itself is a very big topic. What is the meaning of non-violence? Sometimes people think non-violence means if somebody hits me on one cheek, I should put the other cheek forward. So that is not Krishna's idea of non-violence. The Vedic idea of non-violence is to do whatever is necessary to ensure that one does not check the onward progressive journey of a living entity. Sometimes, to help and facilitate either an individual or a community or a country, sometimes physical violence may be needed to create a favorable situation or a progressive environment. That is not considered himsa. That is still considered ahimsa only. And that is the job of the kshatriya. Shatatrayate. Now, this is a very profound topic. If you're not fully able to grasp what I just mentioned, it's okay. We'll discuss this some other day in great detail. But I'd just like to quote one verse from the scriptures. Many times people quote this verse, ahimsa paramo dharma. How many of you have heard ahimsa paramo dharma? Yes, even ahimsa is the greatest dharma. But people do not understand what is the meaning of ahimsa. But the point is that that verse is only half the verse. That ahimsa paramo dharma is only half of the quotation. What is the full quotation? Ahimsa paramo dharma, dharma himsa tathaiva cha. That not only ahimsa is the highest religion, but himsa, when used for the purpose of protection of dharma, is also equally great. Is also equally great. Non-violence is good, wonderful, but equally good is the use of violence when it is needed for the protection of dharma. That is why Krishna's instructions to Arjuna to fight, to destroy adharma, It's not himsa. It is ahimsa. Because in certain times, violence is needed to check even more worse violence. Correct? I'll give you a very simple example. I don't. After that, we'll not delve more deeper into this topic. I'll give you a very simple example. If there is a man who's trying to outrage the modesty of a young girl, okay. So if another person happens to see that, happens to be there, what should he do? To protect that girl, that person has to use physical force to stop the person who is doing what he's trying to do. And in that process, he has to employ violence. So is that actually violence? It is not. Because that violence is necessary to protect the non-violence for the girl. So ahimsa is paramo. The best is nobody attack the girl. But if somebody attacks the girl, somebody employs himsa to protect the girl, that is also equally valuable. Understand? So that's why not all external forms of aggression are necessarily bad. And that is why violence used for the protection of dharma is actually very valuable. I just wanted you to remember this point. Ahimsa, satyam, truthfulness. Truthfulness means one should not lie for one's personal interest. Now, each of these qualities we can discuss a lot. I'll carry on. Akrodha, freedom from anger. Even when one is provoked, one doesn't become angry. This is quite difficult, especially in Kali Yuga. One of the chief characteristics of Kali Yuga is it is extremely easy to irritate and make angry somebody. One the smallest of things, little nudge, little use of the wrong word, and people start jumping. Because there's no peace inside, a little stimulus causes the frustration to spill out. That's the reality. And I think for most of us who are staying in cities, we are also not immune to that situation. But divine qualities, akrodha, not becoming agitated. Then tyagaha, shantir, apaishunam. Tyaga means renunciation. Renunciation means, Prabhupada explains, renunciation is not just giving up things, but using them for the higher cause or using them in service of Krishna. Shanti is tranquility. Tranquility means being very unagitated, peaceful, and equipoised. Apaishunam is also a very wonderful quality. This quality is especially important for sadhakas and devotees like us. Apaishunam means the quality of not finding fault with others. The strong nature of the conditioned mind is always continuously, he's like this, she's like that. Every moment to moment, we are judging everybody's actions, their motives, and ascribing most of the times demoniac qualities to them. Very rarely divine qualities of finding faults. And at the end of the day, we conclude, actually, I am the only devotee. Everybody else is demon. What to do, Krishna? So that is the assessment of the demon. That is the assessment of the demon. The demon thinks that everybody else is bad. Actually, I am the wonderful one. And whatever little apparently bad qualities I have is caused by this demon and people who are troubling me. That is why I have to behave like this. Otherwise, I am so wonderful. This is the psychology of most conditioned souls. So let us reflect internally and see. Maybe many of us may also have similar patterns of thinking. It's a very, very common pattern. What is it? I am full of good qualities. Others, most of them have bad qualities. And whatever little bad qualities I have, I can actually explain to them why they are there, because he did like this, he did like that. Otherwise, I was wonderful. Everything would have been wonderful. You see, this person did like this. That's why I behaved like this. What to do? Otherwise, I'm so nice. This. All bad, these people are responsible for all the bad in my life. And good is all because of my inherent, wonderful, divine nature. And mind you, even the biggest demoniac people think like this. Even the demoniac people justify their faults, create non-existent good qualities, and continuously judge others to find faults. So those who are actually advanced in divine consciousness are apaishunam, which means they become free from the tendency for finding fault in others. So Prabhupada says, unless one is having the duty of finding fault, whose duty it is to find fault?
Teacher,
Teacher, yes.
parent,
Teacher, parent. So if you're in a position or a boss, you're finding fault not in a negative sense, but pointing out deficiencies so that they can be improved. If that is our service as a superior, either as a parent, as a teacher, as a leader, as a king, if that is needed, then in the spirit of service that can be done. Otherwise, we should generally avoid. Of course, this is a very difficult thing to follow because the mind is continuously processing. Now, how to overcome that is a very big topic. One day we'll discuss about that because it's a very, very important point. It's apaishunam. And it's very difficult. I find it very difficult to follow. Daya bhuteshu, compassion for all living entities. Aloluptvam, freedom from covetousness. Freedom from covetousness means greed. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. No matter how much we have, we want more. Greed. Tejaha, discuss this at the beginning. Vigor, especially for Kshatriyas. Teja is important. A Kshatriya cannot go into war, hold his sword, and start fighting as if he's playing Dandiya, Navaratri. Gently. He has to fight with great vigor. I mean, some of the soldiers nowadays fighting is, of course, it's still a lot of bravery, but in the olden times, fighting was not sitting in bunkers and shooting bullets and hoping that a bullet doesn't hit me. Most of the times they would have swords and shields and they would rush towards an army and fight in close combat. So such vigor, such. So Kshatriya should have this kind of a spirit. That is appreciated. Kshama, forgiveness, especially small faults, Prabhupada says, of others, one should overlook. Sometimes we are over processing others' mistakes. So even if we are a teacher, parent, leader, sometimes it's good that we don't have to go on correcting every mistake that somebody does. We just demoralize them. So one must have the maturity of also forgiving wherever forgiveness will help. Dhriti, fortitude. Fortitude means emotional and mental strength. It means not being shaken in difficult situations, in very simple words. Oh, I lost my job. Oh, I've been diagnosed with this disease. Somebody becomes totally shaken and crumbled from the inside. We see that often, especially those who are materialistic individuals. When they will suddenly realize that, oh, I have been diagnosed with a terminal disease, their whole life will come down crumbling. They will totally be shattered. They will withdraw from the world. They'll blame God and their surroundings and life and everything and become extremely bitter. Devotees don't react like that. I remember, sorry, I'm going to divert. Oh, 9:55. Okay, never mind. We will complete this chapter. I just want to mention this since I remember this point. Zolnes Radhanath Maharaj often gives the example of a very nice brahmachari in our temple, in Radha Gopinath temple. His name was Toka Krishna Prabhu. He uses the example of when I was staying in the ashram, he was staying with us. So I know, we all know him personally. So his story in brief is he was a brahmachari for many years. Then later he became a grahastha, got married. He had a child. The child was very small. I don't remember how old, but very, very young. At that time, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. At a very young age. So it is described when he was with the doctor told him that you have terminal cancer. So normally what a person will, finished, gone. Oh Krishna, I did so much for you. What did you do for me? This is what you did. Maharaj is explaining that rather than being sad, when he heard that, he started smiling. Smiling in the sense that, who can understand Krishna's will? Whatever it is, I accept Krishna's supreme plan. I cannot understand, but I accept his supreme will. Of course, it doesn't mean that we don't try to counteract it. It's not that, but it was at a stage where he couldn't be treated and he couldn't recover. And it is said, rather than blaming anybody or his karma or his situation, his consciousness, Maharaj says, was such that he was so grateful to Krishna that in whatever life he had, 35 years, I don't remember exactly his age when he left the world, in his 30s, he was so grateful that he was always recounting and thanking Krishna for giving him the opportunity to serve Krishna all these years, whatever he had, for giving him the holy names, for giving him the Bhagavad, giving the opportunity to chant the holy names. So Maharaj was saying that because he had such a grateful consciousness, even in such a difficult situation. Just imagine, just married, a young wife and a child. You are diagnosed with terminal cancer and you have been a brahmachari serving Krishna practically for the last 15-20 years. So externally, one may feel so justified to complain. And Maharaj made a very wonderful point. Maharaj said, this is Maharaj's own assessment, that the moment he started thinking like this and responding like this, Krishna decided that he deserves to go back home, back to Godhead, because he has such a wonderful consciousness. So it's a very long story. Don't have time for that. But eventually he left his body in the temple, surrounded by devotees, surrounded by Maharaj, chanting the holy names, a very wonderful situation, and attained the supreme destination. So the point here is that fortitude, dhriti, mental and emotional strength, and the strength is also rooted in abhayam. This strength is not just a material strength. This strength is rooted in taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. Then shaucham, cleanliness. Cleanliness is not just bodily cleanliness, but also cleanliness of the mind. The mind is cleansed by chanting the holy names. Adroho, freedom from envy, not being resentful of others, of situations, blaming others. So this also is all part of adroha. Na ati manita, freedom from passion for honor. Freedom from passion for honor means not expecting to be glorified or honored. So essentially it means being humble, being modest, and respecting others appropriately. Bhavanti sampadam daivim abhijatasya bharata. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to the godly men who are endowed with divine natures. So this brings us to the end of the first 3 verses of 16th chapter. You can imagine, even though we went through it very, very fast, we could only cover 3 verses. Okay, so I've gone through in brief. I again reiterate my request to discuss, to read through the purports. To get deeper insight, Prabhupada gives much deeper explanation on these various qualities. But I'm opening up the floor if anybody wants to add something or ask something in relation to these divine qualities. Also, if anybody wants to share any reflection and on how many out of these 26 they think is matching from their list, then I'm also very happy to hear.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, go ahead.
I haven't studied Vedas, so studying of Vedas is reading the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Absolutely. So you are already studying the Vedas. So we are studying the conclusion of the Vedas, which is it's a Veda ischa sarvai rahamaiva Veda. That the goal of the Vedas is to know me. Krishna is understood through the Gita and the Bhagavad. So we are all studying the Vedas. We are studying the Vedanta, the conclusive understanding of the Vedas. Because the Vedas have many things. Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Traigunya Bhavarji. Vedas also discuss a lot of subject matter which is related to the 3 modes, which is not of interest to us. There may be so many pujas, yajnas, which are related to getting so many material benefits. So that is not of interest to us. So our purpose of studying the Vedas is to understand Vedanta. And the conclusion of Vedanta is to understand and love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we are doing exactly that. And that is why it is recommended in Kali Yuga, just focus on studying the Gita and the Bhagavad. It is adequate. So all of you here are in that category.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, no questions. So anyone wants to share how many out of 26 points? So of course they are difficult to say in yes or no, because how do you say Satyam, Tyagaha, Shanti? You cannot assign 0 or 100. Many of these qualities, we are in a particular range. We are neither black nor are we white. We need to give a weighting to each one. But the point is, again, this is not so much about telling the world where we are now. It is about a reflection on ourselves, where we are, which are the qualities which we have not been focusing and we need to focus on. Because a pure devotee has all these 26 qualities. Okay, so there is nothing else, then we'll conclude the class for today. So we will continue our discussion on Saturday on the Srimad Bhagavad. Also, Gaur Purnima is coming in a couple of weeks' time. So please prepare your consciousness accordingly. So after the first 3 verses, which we have discussed, the next 5 verses, the Lord is talking about Asura Sampada, the demoniac qualities. So next 2 classes at least, we'll be focusing on Asura qualities. And again, I repeatedly say, whenever we discuss about Asura qualities, we must not be looking for, oh, he has that quality, she has that quality. This is about inward looking. Otherwise, immediately we are scanning, oh, amongst my friends, relatives, spouse, children, father, mother, mother-in-law, father-in-law, who are fitting into these demoniac qualities. And we quickly say, yes, all 26 divine qualities are in me, and all the demoniac qualities I have distributed to all my connected persons. That's the mentality. So this is, I'm not just telling you, I'm telling this to myself also. So just please be careful. This is for self-reflection. This is not for labeling others. And that is why one of the good qualities is apaishunam, not finding faults in others. Because we do not know what is the specific situation of others, what is their journey, what is their situation, what is their context. That is why their response we cannot always judge without properly understanding. So we let those who are responsible for them handle that, and we focus on our most important project in life, which is improving ourselves. So we reflect, we work on that. Okay? So I seek all of your blessings that I can also improve myself, because I am also severely lacking in all good qualities. And demoniac qualities are also not difficult to find. So a long way to go. But the good thing is, when we remain in the association of devotees, when we continue the sadhana, chant the holy names, read Bhagavatam, all these inauspiciousness in our heart, the time becomes all cleared. So that is our great benediction. Okay, so thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Shri
Jai.
Prabhupada ki Jai, Samavita. Thank you.
Hari Bol. Thank you,
Hari
Prabhuji.
Bol. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hari Bol.
Thank you and Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.